America, all the success, and then your heart attack, quadruple bypass, and we pick up the story there. So tell me what's going on, what was going on at that time as you worked back into, you spent 2 years getting into the, getting back, even working at Office Max as a clerk to be able to do something, and pick up the story there.
Well, I began, I went back to church first time in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself in the New Thought movement.
Yes.
With Unity, and that's where I began to heal, began to find myself, began to answer some of those questions. The question,
Mm-hmm.
who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And about a year after I started going there, one of the ministers came up to me after service one day and said, I think you'd make a good prayer chaplain. I was still healing. I was still, trying to figure things out. And I said, her name was Donna. I said, Donna, that scares the heck out of me. I guess I'm supposed to say yes. And I did. And that was so rewarding to recognize what holding sacred space means. I'm hearing you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to hold for you the knowing that while you're coming apart, that there is a golden light in you that's ready to come through. And along that time, I was meeting with a couple other of the male prayer chaplains. There were just a few of us, and we were trying, what is this holding space? What is this prayer? We were trying to figure it out, and I began to recognize and realize I didn't trust men. And that goes back to early life.
Exactly.
And so I don't know if I'm going to open up, and then I kind of open up, and I begin to show up with my authentic self, the other side of vulnerability.
Right. Standing
in my truth with an open heart, as Brene Brown says.
Yes.
And there was some energy that was happening. I said, I want to pursue this. And if I'm feeling this, there's bound to be another guy out there somewhere that feels it too. And I think we can learn from each other. And so with that, I said, I'm going to start a men's circle. And they said, well, do it once a quarter. Don't ever. And I said, I want to do it every week. Someone set the drum beat, set a pace.
Right.
We're coming to the table with not whole. All my emotion, is stuffed down as a child.
Right.
Little boys are born with more emotion than little girls. Well, that's not how it turns out, because we're taught to stuff all that emotion.
Yeah.
Anger is the only one that you can share. Well, where does all that energy go?
Has to come
and
out
we
somewhere.
have to put all that together. That emotion's not good. And so I close my hands around it with fear and with shame.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a shell. Well, that energy's, it's going to come out one way or the other.
Yeah.
For me, it was a heart attack. Okay? Why does that have to be? If I can open and then integrate, then I'm really bringing my authentic self, my true self to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I can be demonstrative and I can have tears. It's okay. That's who I am as a human being. That's where we're moving to.
Yeah.
The recognition that, we're dying because of this. And we're putting anger and all the fear out into the world because of this. We don't have to be here. This doesn't have to be this way.
Are you seeing a change in the willingness to be heard for this principle? I mean, look at you. You're getting speaking engagements all over. You're getting organization. You're doing retreats. I mean, there appears to be something going on here. Can you talk about that?
One of the things that I think really has brought it to the surface is the Me Too movement. The women stood up and said, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And then me too, and me too, thousands of women. Well, then there started to be some guys that said, me too. And at first, we thought they were just mocking the women.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
No.
And we both have a recognition that within the patriarchal system, which has gotten us so far, good and bad,
Yep.
that we're both wounded. You know, face it, I'm a privileged white male. I've got everything going for me.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you about my wounds. Oh, but I can't. But I'm wounded as well. And these men standing up and saying, me too, the recognition that is the common denominator, way down deep, is that. And if we can connect on that level and honor that, men and women, women and men, men and men,
Yes.
if we all that honor that, it doesn't have to be the same experience, but it's that wound.
No.
Then we can bless it and let it go. Be heard and recognize that we are one. That's, I think, the Me Too movement was a real catalyst in helping to bring that forward.
God, I couldn't agree more, and I love this idea of bringing. I only know of one solution, one healing or wholeness for shame in my life, and that has been sunlight. Is that when I brought it out, when I found that I was not, I mean, I grew up thinking I was the one broken person. Everybody else had it figured out. They all did, and I wasn't. So therefore, I just drove it into, and drove this pile of shame. I mean, seriously, I am also a privileged white male. But I also tell you that there are parts of my personality that thank God that there, but for the grace of God, that I did not have the pathology inside of me, but I was just as dark, I was just as wounded and just as broken as I see people who act out and do awful, terrible, horrible things. It just so happened I just turned that inward and did that toward me. It was, but it's no different. It's
right. That's right, and that's what I began to ask myself. You know, as a prayer chaplain, and starting this men's circle, you know, I'm going to be there because I need it. I don't care if anybody else shows up, and and we put the clipboard out and stuff for 3 weeks, and nobody signed up. Nobody. And what I learned from that is, well, men don't commit, but they'll show up. And I had a dozen guys, and we've been gathering for 7 years. I've got over 500 men in the circle, in the network. I got about 150 that are active. Every Monday night, we've got 18 to 25. We had 37, in this circle. Now, imagine this. We've called it the Men's Fellowship Network, okay? And the latest that we're doing as we're going out is the Circles of Men project. But the Men's Fellowship Network is not a group, it's a network. We have gatherings and not meetings. We have topics of conversation and not topics of discussion. You see where this is going?
I do.
Subtle differences to take me out of my left brain, out of my corporate world. I'm going into a meeting. We're going to have a discussion. Somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong. Just leave that outside. That's not what we're about. We're here to learn how to connect head and heart. I need to learn how to vocalize and express myself with another man.
Yeah.
He's struggling too. We're both struggling.
Exactly.
To create a safe and sacred environment where nobody's trying to fix anybody, but we're there to hold space and to listen and to share. I take a topic and I'll put it out there. It could be grace, it could be vulnerability, it could be fear, whatever the topic. It's inconsequential. It's the starting point for us to have a conversation. Again, not a discussion, but a conversation. Exactly. And what's happened, and it happened one night, we had like 20 guys in the circle. And first of all, when you have that many guys in a circle, add everybody's age up. You have well over 1,000 life years of experience sitting right there.
Wow.
There's something that you've learned in life that would be helpful to me, and vice versa. If we could only have the trust to be open and share. our conversation ebbed into a silence. Now, 20 guys, somebody's got to fill that silence. Somebody's going to jump in there. Well, no, they didn't. And you could feel the energy. Each of us could feel the energy. We were not alone. There was somebody else. We were all together. Sat there for almost 5 minutes, and finally one guy said, well, what just happened? Another guy says, well, you know, I was holding space for you. Another guy said, well, I was holding space for you. Another fellow said, well, you know, every day I pause just a minute or two and think about everybody in this circle. Send you good energy, you know. Mm. And another fellow said, we ought to all do that every day at the same time. Let's do it at 11:11. So now, you know, we all got our phones set.
Yeah.
And at 11:11, it comes up. And I go, hang on just a second. Okay, I'm back. From whatever I'm doing. Just that moment that somebody else, I know somebody's got my back.
Yep.
But I had the occasion to meet and begin to work with an organization called Gender Equity and Reconciliation International.
Tell me more about that.
What a fantastic group of people. First of all, they're in 10 countries. They've been working at this for 27 years. And it's what I had referred to, I think, in the last segment, about coming to this place and connecting on a deep, deep level, recognizing the wounds within one another.
Sure.
In a sacred setting, so that healing, so that, like you said, to bring it into the light without judgment and recognize how we are all really connected. And that, we've talked about the Me Too movement and the awareness of that, and that's a real springboard that gets brought out with that work. And I'm so passionate about it, I'm becoming a facilitator with them.
God, that's wonderful.
I've been looking for, okay, so we men are doing this work and we're learning from one another, and this contemplative approach, this is a stepping stone. It's a stepping stone. It's not one of the other 5 models, you know, the Jungian model or the Robert Bly model or the Million Man March or the traditional. Those have all gotten them into a set, but this contemplative model is this next space. But now what? Where do we go from there? Well, where do we go from there is the deep healing between men and women. And that's the work that Gender Equity and Reconciliation International has been doing for 27 years, all over the world. And that's coming up. In May, we were at the United Nations. We were having a workshop with the Committee on Spirituality, Values, and Global Concerns. People from all over the world. The common denominator was, in some form or fashion, me too. Yes. The common denominator was the sharing of that deep wound. When a circle comes together that's like that, there's the only way I can describe it is that it's an alchemy that happens. It's beyond words, but there's a transformation. Transformational healing is how they term it. And we come away different. We show up in the world a couple of degrees different than and that, over time,
all the difference makes.
That's right. And you're right. You said earlier about a tipping point. So, yeah, that's the men's work, is to raise our consciousness about that and to take that learning, what we can learn from one another's experiences, so that we can, broad generalization, I believe that women tend to be more conscious than men.
Yeah. Well, it certainly has been. I mean, if I look at it, if I look at 2 teenagers that we were there, we look at that, I bless our heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're here and we're here. Now, do you think the women are going to come down here to meet us where we are? Hell no.
No.
No. We have got to work ourselves. We've got to do this.
Yep.
We've got to raise our game. We've got to raise our consciousness to meet women where they are. But we're not allowed to do that out in public.
Yep.
We're not allowed to go work these things. You know, Brene Brown, in one of her talks, I think she has in her book, a guy came up to her after one of her talks and said, well, Dr. Brown, you're just studying women, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, yeah, I am. And he said, well, that's convenient. He said to her, my wife would rather see me die on top of my white horse than to fall off. So where do I go? I'm broken on the inside. If I show that to my family, if they get any glimpse, it scares them.
Yeah.
And my role is I can't do that to them. So I'm stuck unless I'm connected with another man.
Yep.
Well, so that's our men's work.
Yep.
In preparation so that we can show up authentically with our wife or spouse, show up authentically in the world. And because aside from politics, cultures, around the world, the one common denominator is the patriarchal system has taken us, polarized us.
Right.
How do we find our way to come back together? Not to be, like women, not to be the male or the female energy, but to honor both.
Right. Because both exist within me.
Yeah. And it's not resolution to be this or this. No. In the gender equity work, they talk about holding the tension of opposites. To recognize that your thought is different than my thought.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we can just battle that out all day long. Or we can hold that tension of opposites and raise for something greater than that. That this is a paradox.
God, that's lovely.
This is a paradox. The world's a paradox.
Of course.
Get over it.
Exactly.
Okay? And that's where compassion comes in. Compassion for oneself
Yep.
and for the other person. It's easy to take this side. It's easy to take this side. Black and white.
Mm-hmm.
The real power, the real strength is to bring compassion. And that's the ability to hold in your heart the knowing that these are just two ends of a bigger story.
Yeah.
And let's find the bigger story here. That's the higher good. And we can do that. We are doing it.
You are doing it. And this, I want to ask you about, because I saw a picture of the G20 the other day, which are the top leaders. And so here is a picture. They're all on stage, and there are 18 men. And then there's Christine Lagarde, who is the IMF head. She's now been promoted. And then Angela Merkel. Mm-hmm. Theresa May's not on there now. But when I looked at that, it was it startled me. It startled because I look out in the world. It's not that way. Even in the corporate world where I'm still working as a communication coach, it's different. And it was just so stark to be able to see that. And so I'm thinking about, okay, how when any group has ever gracefully shared power. So how do we as men invite in and find it to be the absolute necessary value to be able to gracefully share this power rather than having it ripped from our cold, dead hands?
I used to say in Motorola, my perception was that I had, high heel marks on my back. My perception that a woman got this position over me.
Yeah, because you know why? Yes, because
yeah, and that's a lower level consciousness thinking. One of my I used to say, well, the women are going to make it to the top, but they're smarter than us. They're going to get to the top and say, this is for the birds.
Right.
And they're going to give it back to us. But the truth of the matter is, what a rich and powerful, to bring all of that energy, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, all together, in the million different ways that can play out. I have to share this, that on my website, mensfellowship.net, over the years, literally half, 49.4% last year, of the visitors to that website were women.
Wonderful.
I was given a small talk out in Bastrop and sitting around a table, and that point came up. And I said, the reason that this is happening is that the The women are looking for a resource for their man. It's either that or they're stalking us. Well, after the laughter died down, and I said, I can't unring that bell.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't say that. The woman sitting next to me, she said, Clay, I've been following your site for quite a while. And let me tell you why. I'm a man in a woman's body. Where do I go to figure that out?
Mm-hmm.
The incredible diversity, the incredible resource for good that is out there.
Yes.
If we can hold the tension of opposites, live within the paradox, aim for the bigger picture. And that's not pie in the sky. That's survival of the species in my books.
Yes.
You know, with the Charter for Compassion, you know, I'm writing the initiative for the men's sector, they call them. And the first thing that the board chair said to me was, when we were talking about it, he said, well, why don't you write it? You know? He said, saddle up next to the women and girls sector leader.
Yeah.
She'll take you under her wing. She'll kind of assimilate you into what's happening, into the constellation that's out there. And then you can define and begin to kind of feel for what is it that you're going to do. And I said, well, first of all, I'm not going to sit there and write this out because I don't have the answer, but I can help create the conversation, and that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
I was invited on a weekly call that the women and girls sector for the Charter for Compassion has, women from all over the world on this Zoom call. They said, Clay, would you sit in on this? I said, well, I'm a guy, you know.
Yeah.
She was pretty wise about it. Sat in on that call, and I just, you talk about what's not in the news. Oh my gosh, the incredible things that are going on out there. After that call, she said, well, Clay, would you consider being part of our women and girls leadership team? I said, oh, I'd be an honor.
Yep.
I mean, you know, and I've got, you know, chills. And so that's what I do. That's the sharing.
Yep.
And she and the women are actually helping birth the men's initiative.
Yes.
Isn't that kind of poetic?
That is, not only is it poetic, but it is exactly the way it has to be.
Yeah.
This has to be a collaborative sector. The men can't, we can't go off by ourselves and the women off by themselves and then figure it out and then come back together. There has to
Yeah.
be.
Well, and let me tell you, those women, I mean, there's nothing Pollyannish about this. These women are on the front lines.
Yep.
One week I was on the call, and this woman, I think she was in Saudi Arabia, working on women's rights. And she said, you know, in some circles I'm considered a dissident.
Of course.
Now recognize that a few days prior to that call, there were 40 men that were rounded up. Without trial, they were said, you're dissidents. And they were beheaded.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this isn't La La Land. This is the real deal.
Yep.
You know, and we talk about, you know, these higher level consciousness, all these things. It is our future.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't go there, we might have fold up shop.
Yep.
And these women are doing it.
All
These
over
women
the
are the
world.
leaders that are doing it. They are here.
Yep.
And we guys have got to do this.
But that's what we're doing here,
Yes.
and that's what I love about getting a chance to talk with you, and I love the way that you keep bringing back the word conversation, because the concept of reasonably spontaneous conversation is something is alive.
Yeah.
It is alive. We get to experience it, and the depth of vulnerability that both of us are willing to go to, and that we're willing to sit down and to see, and it will actually happen. So we'll actually be able to see this happening, because in conversation is much different than anything else that we can do. That's what I love about this in this last couple of minutes. Tell me anything else that we want to leave this. What one of the many thousands of subjects that we could big on. Would you like to take us off the scene with?
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you, it's not just about the men in the circle. I go back to us having one another's back, and we go through life together. You know, to stand with our brother in hospice and hold his hand as he
Yes.
transitions. What an intimate gift, what a sacred gift that is.
God,
To him and to me.
has to be.
You know, to feel the pulse just in, you know, that rite of passage, that final rite of passage for him on this go round.
Yeah.
You know, and the learning, that's the depth of connection I think that we all have to have for survival and to go through life together.
I agree.
Men with men, men with women, women with men, women with women.
Yep. And all across the gender spectrum.
All
because
across.
because of what I all across the spectrum when we think, because I internally always identified with women.
Mm-hmm.
I it was just because of my sensitive nature and because
Mm-hmm.
what I had and so that was such a weird thing to grow up to be able to
Right.
identify, love the privileges of being a man,
Mm-hmm.
go out on the back porch and pee. Believe me, that's a nice
Yeah.
thing to be able to do just on the thing, not
Mm-hmm.
something that you be able to walk outside without a shirt on. Nobody cares. No, I mean, they might care in the sense that, oh God, but still, there's nothing. I mean, I think there's a lot of real privilege, but at the same time, my identification has always been with the feminine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll leave one last thought. I'm leaving next week, and I'm going to Kenya. I'm going to be there for 3 weeks. I'm doing two things there. One is young men learning to speak this way. And the co-facilitators that I'm communicating with in preparation for going, oh my gosh, what an exciting time, because they're ready. These are incredibly smart young men. Following that, I'll be there for a 3-day gender equity and reconciliation workshop, men and women. They're doing it. They're doing it. And to see this evolution, to witness it, whether it's, you know, in Seattle or whether it's at the United Nations or in Kenya, Australia, South Africa, the seeds are there being planted, and it's coming up. And to be part of that is a blessing.
And to be able to have me nagging at you to come back and tell me about that experience.
I'd be honored.
Thank you, dear one.
Thank you. I appreciate it so much.